to have you here. Where we don't do interviews, we do conversations to allow those who we are interested in a number of different areas to participate one on one in the stories that we hear every day. Clearly, the city of Detroit, where I have just absolutely love for, is on the verge of yet after 12 years, a new mayor. In this race will be two women in the race, two women. And I have said this before, I've been very candid about it. I think that it is about time for the city of Detroit to be led by a woman. I believe that with the city's 82% population, with the number of women and women voters, women who are heads of household with children, it is time for that voice to be heard from the office of the CEO.
That's
So
right.
over the next couple of, did I just hear my guest say right? I think I heard her say right in
Yes,
the
that is right. Yes.
from the office of the CEO be a woman. And so along the way, as we work toward the primary on August 5th, I am having conversations with the candidates who are vying to be the next mayor of one of the greatest cities on the planet. It is the city of Detroit. Joining me now, good to have her on the show, Saunteel Jenkins. Hello and welcome to Conversations with Frankie Darcell.
Hello. I am so happy to be here with you, Frankie. How are
Listen,
you?
I am well. I am well. We are in a digital world. Let me give some housekeeping rules. People are checking in already. Hi, Tia. Thank you for watching. Hi to Calvin as well. We're going to be taking your questions and your comments, both for me and for my guest as well. So put your comments in the scroll, and we'll be more than happy to respond to those. My I don't know. He's going to be working. He's a working man now. He is a former intern of mine. I'm so proud of him. And I believe that each one teach one. That has been the roadmap of my career. He is a former intern. He is now my associate producer for Conversations. He graduates from the St. Joe's University coming up in May. Reese Green is joining me. He's going to be going through the questions, comments, and commentary. So, Reese, thank you so much. I'm looking forward to the responses of everybody that is watching. All right, so let's get started. First, let me give you an opportunity for an opening statement as to why you believe that you should be the next mayor of the city of Detroit.
Thank you so much, Frankie. Again, it's an honor to be with you. You're somebody who I've watched and looked up to for so many years here in the city of Detroit, and it's great to see your face again. Yeah,
Thank
at
you so
some
much.
point you have to start aging, though, for real.
Yeah, I'll take that. I'll take that. And listen, and back at you, back at you, back at you.
Thank you. I am Saunteel Jenkins. I'm so proud to be a candidate for mayor here in the city of Detroit, a city where I was born and raised. I always say my Detroit is a Detroit story. You know, I grew up here on the west side. I graduated from Cass Tech and then went to Wayne State. I did what I call the 4-year, 9-year plan because it took me 9 years to get my 4-year degree
Mhm, mhm,
because
mhm.
I had to work my way through school. You know, my dad retired from the post office. He was a mailman literally until last year. They made him
Wow.
retire.
All
Uh,
right. All right.
uh, my mom retired from Macy's. My guess is if you ever bought a purse from Macy's at Fairlane, you bought one from my mom. She was at Hudson's, Marshall Fields,
Yeah.
then Macy's. But
Yeah.
I grew up in a working class family, you know, where we struggled. My parents struggled. I say we, but it was really my parents struggling to make ends meet. And I was a product of their hard work and their emphasis on hard work and giving back to the community, which I've done my entire life. I was a social worker. I majored in social work, but I wanted to be a social worker even before I knew what it was called. That's been my entire life service. And at this point in our city where we're all celebrating the progress that we've made, it's so important to have a mayor who still recognizes that we're on this bubble where things could go either way. They can continue to progress, but they have to progress in a way that's inclusive, or we could go backwards. And if we go backwards, we won't see another turnaround in our history. I was at the table fighting the hard fight during our bankruptcy. So I understand fully how we got to that point. I understand fully how we got out of it. My last day at council was us, the plan of adjustment being approved by the federal courts. So I know what the map was. And I believe that with my legislative experience from being a city council member and council president, and my executive experience over the last 10 years being a CEO, I am well prepared to step into the mayor's office and hit the ground running from day one. And I believe that's what we need.
Mhm. You worked for as chief of staff, and you talked about graduating from Wayne State University.
Mhm.
The Honorable, God rest her soul, Miriam Mahaffey,
Yes.
someone who I just enjoyed listening to, and every time she would come do an interview with me, she'd bring a gift of some sort, right?
Yes,
It
yes.
was always
That was
a cute
Mary Ann.
little, yes, a gift that she would bring, but it was there that you said in your bios that you became interested in being a elected official or a public servant.
Mhm.
That impact on you.
Yes, it was a huge impact on me. And I will tell you, when I worked for Mary Ann, I wasn't interested in being an elected official. When she would talk to me about it, I'd say to her, oh, only crazy people run for office. It was later, after she passed, that I went crazy and ran for office.
Mhm,
But what Mary Ann did help me understand was the connection between what we do as social workers and public policy. Mary Ann told me that social workers put band-aids on wounds caused by poor public policy. She said
mm,
we need more good people to get in on the front end because it reduces the damage on the back end. And
mhm,
if we want to see the damage on the back end, all we have to do is look at what's happening right now in DC with the elimination of the Department of Education and the misuse of laws to illegally deport people and, cuts to health and human services. Social workers will have to deal with that damage on the back end. So
mhm.
at this point in our history, it's so important that we have fighters like Marianne on the local level and on the state level because we are the front line of defense.
All right. Listen, I want to thank everybody for checking in. Hi, Roxanne Platter, for watching. Sandy Yancey Smith, always good to have you in the conversation. Tia, of course, want to say hi to Craig and Chris. Put your questions and comments. We will read your questions and comments for the candidate coming up in just a few minutes. I want to go back. Let
Mhm.
me clean up a couple of things before we move forward.
Okay.
You mentioned being a social worker. You mentioned being an elected official. You were elected to city council in 2010, ended your tenure in 2014. You served as well as council president before leaving. Before we get to your leaving, there is a video that has been circulating. It appears from the video that you were at an event,
Mhm.
and the current council president showed up at that event
Mhm.
and had commentary about your service on
Mhm.
city council. Reese, can we play that so that people can see it? Go right ahead.
Did not receive the votes to become the president. 1 month later, she left the city at the worst of times during the bankruptcy and left to go work as a CEO. It wasn't because, oh, now water is important. You ran for council president. So you were committed. As soon as you didn't get that position at the worst, we were in the midst of a bankruptcy going through the worst of times. And then
All right, let me say that when I saw and
Mhm.
heard the video, I have my own commentary.
Mhm.
Before I get to that, the video cuts off as it was sent to me
Yeah.
at the end where you said, no, 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 let me respond. Let me give you an opportunity here to
Mhm.
respond to that video that has almost gone viral.
Mhm. Well, first of all, let me say it was a senior building that I was scheduled to be at to talk to seniors. The council president was not scheduled to be there and came in and basically forced her way into this conversation. Um, and her comments not only were disrespectful and inappropriate, they were inaccurate. So I ran and was elected to city council twice. In 2009, and I started in 2010. I was reelected 2013, started in 2014.
Mhm.
I was in November of 2014, a recruiter called me about a job, which I turned down twice. The third time she called me, I said, let's talk about this. And at that point, almost a year into the second term, not a month, a year, we were coming out of bankruptcy. We had a plan of adjustment. We had a financial review committee that was coming on board. And the map for the next 10 years in the city's history had already been laid out. And this was an opportunity for me to go and serve as CEO at the Heat and Warm Fund, a place that helped my family when I was in high school. I've lived in a house with no lights, no heat, no water. I know what thaw does, and I know the importance of it. So an opportunity for me to serve as their CEO and give back in a different way came up, and I did it. And I, just like I've done the rest of my life, I was transparent, I was open, and orderly in the way that I left city council. There are rules in place about how it goes. I followed those rules, and I went to serve as the CEO of Thaw, where I've been for the last 10 years.
All right. Lance Wayne, thank you for joining us. KYG, appreciate your comments. And we will be going to your comments in just a few minutes. I'm just going to ask this. You said that was a scheduled appearance for you. I'll just leave this here. Because one of the last things that we want, and that women in particular would like to see, is the two women getting into a cat fight with the only two women in the election. How do you respond to is that leadership and how leadership should lead?
Absolutely not. First of all, leadership should always be setting the example. And the example is dignity, it is respect. It is not only for each other, for the seniors in that building, for the gentleman who scheduled the meeting, who was standing there clearly trying to figure out what to do. So no, that is not the way to lead. It is not the way that I lead or the way I will ever lead. And by the way, my mother was in that audience as well. And there ended up being, my mother was disrespected. I'll just leave it there. But absolutely not. That is, we need someone who, we need a leader who is mature.
Do you feel like you were blindsided or bum rushed?
Oh, I was definitely blindsided because I was scheduled. She wasn't scheduled to be there. She had a staff member there. They called. She found out I was there. She came in. She stood at the back of the room and was talking loudly while I was speaking. Then she came up. I stepped aside and let her speak because I wasn't going to make a scene. And I didn't think it would do either of us any good to make a scene. So I let her speak. She finished, started walking off. I started talking again. Then she came back. So it was almost as if the goal was to make a scene. But if, Frankie, this campaign has barely even started. So like, if that's pressure, like if that's how you perform under pressure, what happens as mayor? Because the mayor is going to be under pressure every day, every week. And we have to be able to show up and be our best selves at all times.
All right, I'm going to move past this particular topic. Thank you so much for your comments and your commentary. Thank you, Roxanne Platter, for listening. We're going to talk about education, moving the city forward in terms of education. We're going to talk about economic development. We're going to start answering some of the questions coming up in just a few minutes as well. And even the mayor's state of the city address just a night or so ago. I want to ask you about that. Clearly, as a candidate for mayor, and where the city is, where it's going, and how it will affect all residents, not only in downtown, which is bustling and doing well, but in the outlying communities where people live and work every day. So let me start here. First with education, and I've asked each of the candidates this question. It's a tough time in the city of Detroit. You know, you went to Cass Tech High School, a district that once boasted 200,000 down to 160,000. down to 100,000, now being what it is, less than 40,000 students in the quote Detroit public school system. We know that we've had conversations for years about whether or not the mayor should have a more influential role, or whether or not the mayor should head the school district. There's no way that a mayor could really move a city forward, bringing new residents into the city, which are young people with children, and they have to prepare for private school. Do you believe that the mayor should have more control, more influence in the public education system in the city of Detroit?
The mayor should definitely have more influence and more impact in the public on public education in the city of Detroit, because as you have articulated, the two are tied at the hip. The city's long-term success is tied to the success of the schools, and the school's long-term success is tied to the success of the city. So the mayor, the school board, the school superintendent should be meeting regularly. When we talk about master planning in the city, which I talk about a strategic master plan for each of the 7 districts, there's no way we should be having this conversation without including the schools, because where families live should be a part of our conversation. So I believe that the mayor needs to address many of the social determinants to education. We talk about social determinants to health. Those are the same issues that impact education, right? Whether or not you're in a home. Right now, we estimate about 3,000 DPS students are homeless or on the verge of homelessness. That is unacceptable. And we should be working directly with the schools to make sure that those families have adequate, affordable housing. We should be working directly with the school system to provide safe spaces and places during the most dangerous hours of the day for kids. And that's 3 p.m. to 8 p.m. For every, we spend $5 on our juvenile justice center for every $1 we're spending on education. It's unacceptable.
What would be one or two of the things you'd like to do as mayor that you could impact some of what you just talked about?
So I'll talk about 2 of the things. First, I want to create educational community hubs across the city in each of the districts. Frankie, I don't know if you've had a chance to see Mary Grove, which has been
Yes.
redeveloped since you left.
And I do business with them all the time, and hopefully we'll be back in October.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
And the Mary Grove model is a model that we should replicate in every district across the city. Every district won't have a Mary Grove College campus, but we certainly have enough land in this city to create this community hub that has early childhood education, elementary, junior high, high school, post K-12 education training. We can do that in every district. And what's happening over there in Live 6 is now families are moving to that neighborhood, because if you live there, you get first consideration to go to the school. So that's the kind of model we should create.
All right. I want to remind people to get your questions, and we're going to start responding to some of your questions in just a little bit. You have what's called the Saunteel 6, and you talk about a number of initiatives in that. In that as well, you talk about a safer Detroit. You know, Detroit has had its peaks, it's had its valleys. And the imaging, and I can tell you even around the country, has improved relative to the city of Detroit. But we know that there are still safety issues and concerns, particularly for our young people and for women who are heads of households. Where are you in terms of public safety? What would you do? What do you think of the public safety? What do you think of the police department and the way it's serving its citizens?
I think the police department is doing a really good job. I think that we've come a long way, a very long way, in the way we're policing. I think that our former police chief, James White, and his focus on mental health started to shift our focus in a way that makes great sense. Our focus on community violence intervention has been effective, but not as effective as we need it to be. So we need to increase our community policing efforts. We need to increase the partnership between the police department and mental health agencies or social work agencies, because some of the things we're using police for,
Mhm.
it should be social service agencies addressing that issues.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
homelessness shouldn't be
Mhm.
criminalized,
Mhm. Mhm.
for example. And we need to bring back our beat cops. When I say community policing, our God rest his soul, Benny Napoleon, called it beat cops, right? And
Mhm. Mhm.
having one for every square mile of the city. And our community needs to know who our police are. We shouldn't only see them when bad things are happening. We should
Mhm.
see them as a regular part of being in a strong and healthy community.
All right. Great. Reese, we're going to go to the question from Sandy Yancey relative to social workers in just a few minutes. But let
Okay.
me ask this question. When we talk about opportunity, small businesses, what is your thought on developing, supporting small businesses from a city perspective, and how the city can support those small business opportunities?
So a couple of things, and part of this is driven by my strategic master plan in each of the 7 districts, and having the community decide these are the businesses we want, right? So if District 1 says we want 2 dry cleaners and 3 bakeries, and I'm just making that up,
Hmm.
then we should be providing incentives for folks to come and open up a dry cleaners and a bakery. And if you live in that district, you get a higher level of incentives. If you don't live in the district, but you live in Detroit, you get a higher level of incentives. And then
Hmm.
if you live outside of Detroit, there are still incentives available if you're providing what the community has said they wanted. That's the
Hmm.
first thing. The second thing is we should be driving critical mass so that we're encouraging people to open businesses in places where they'll be able to be successful, right?
Hmm.
The idea that because my mother makes the bomb pound cake, it doesn't mean that she could be a great business owner. So
Hmm.
we have to provide the resources to make sure that people are prepared to fulfill their dreams and that they have all the tools and resources needed before we put our life savings into a business that has a grand opening and then a year later has a grand closing and you've lost everything.
Mhm, mhm. Reese, let's go to one of our questions. Keep those questions coming. Reese?
Yes, so we have a Sandy Yancey Smith. She said that my family members are master social workers, registered nurse, and educators, and that they have created a substantial, unsustainable level of generational dependency. She
Mm.
asks you, what are the plans for doing things differently to support independence?
Wow, that's interesting because in my mind, social workers, educators, and nurses are in professions that are helping to create independence and to empower people. So, and you do that by educating people, making sure people have the skills that are needed, not only in today's market, but skills that will be useful in tomorrow's market too, right? So that we're always, so we have generations of people who are employable and who are prepared for the jobs that our mayor is bringing to our city, and that our mayor is working with regional leaders to bring to the region, because we're not just, it's not just Detroit versus Oakland County anymore. It's this region versus the world. So
Yeah.
we should all be working together.
All right. Great. Keep the questions coming. KYG says, what is your specific plan to end miseducation of Black students in Detroit and ending the school to prison pipeline?
Oh, wow. That starts with working directly with the schools. I don't have a specific plan for that because the mayor doesn't control the curriculum of the schools. But I think it is my responsibility as a leader in this city, and it's the responsibility of all leadership to make sure that we're properly educating our kids and adults in this community on our history and
Hmm.
on politics and the political process to make sure everyone is involved and active. That's how we create change.
All right. There's a question again from Lance Swain Reese about barriers. Could you
Yes,
read that
he
question?
asks what barriers / red tape the city can cut to make development more attractive to investors.
There's so much red tape. There is so much red tape. And the thing that I hear often is how difficult it is to create developments. And people right now do things like you hire a consultant just to get you through the process. That's unacceptable. We have to make sure Detroit is a place where people know we're open for business. It is simplifying our business licensing and permitting process. It is simplifying the planning process. Part of what a master plan does is update and simplify our zoning. That makes development easy because the land is generally already zoned for what most developers would be bringing there. So it creates a level of transparency. Right now, it takes about 77 steps to open a business in the city of Detroit.
Mm.
I want to cut that down to less than 10.
That's about what I do on a regular basis when I'm trying to work out these days. 77 steps. That's a lot.
I know that's right.
That is a lot. Listen, we've got about 4.5 minutes before we end the interview. I will take maybe one. Reese will take one or two more questions. I'll ask my question. We'll take one final question from our viewers. Thank you guys so much for engaging. Don't forget to follow us on the YouTube page as well. And the audio is going to run on the international radio show as well. You deserve that shine. Let me, with the city of Detroit, where it is, and we see where even in November, women are making things happen. If successful, you would be the first woman elected mayor to the city of Detroit. It is a feat. Do you feel like you have the support of women, the concerns of women, where the majority of women and voters, literally in the highest percentage voting block in the city are women?
Yes.
Do you feel like you have the support of women and can deliver on the services that women need?
Yes, yes, and yes. 62% of the voters in Detroit are women. So definitely, I believe we can do this in November, and we will. I believe that I have the support of women, and I hear it and I see it every single day. The support of women who I've helped over the years, the support of women who have mentored me or women that I've mentored, women who were supporters of my mentor, Mary Mahaffey, and who know the work that I've done my entire adult life in this community. And I have the support of women who watched me publicly go through my battle with breast cancer because I wanted I won't call it a tragedy because I'm here, but it was a struggle, right? It was a struggle. And I wanted people to learn from my struggle. If one woman could struggle less because of what I went through, then I thought it was worth it to be completely open and transparent and honest about one of the most difficult times in my life. So yes, I have the support of women because they know that I've been supporting women in this community my entire life.
All right. Final question from our audience. Again, thank you all for listening. Don't forget to follow us on the YouTube page as well. Reese, the final question.
Yes, and this comes from KYG. It's a two-parter. What is your specific plan to end gentrification in Detroit? And then what is your specific plan to increase employment for youth in Detroit and reduce crime?
Wow. Two great questions. KYG's got the questions. So first,
he's always loaded.
The on gentrification, and I know I keep talking about this strategic master plan, it's so important for many reasons because it guides how you're doing things in the city. So I believe strongly that most Detroiters want to see growth. They want to see the city do well. And the difference in whether they see it as gentrification or growth is whether or not they're involved and included. And the master planning process that involves the community and allows people to say, this is what I want to see in my neighborhood, is what makes a difference. That's part of it. The other part is providing those incentives and resources to make it easier for Detroiters and for Black and Brown people to be a part of this growth and the resurgence and all the money that's being made in the city. And then the second half of KYG's question was, can you tell me again?
Yes. So he was asking, what is your specific plan to increase employment for youth in Detroit and then reduce the crime?
Thank you. So for youth in Detroit, that's part of the partnership with the Detroit public school systems, but it's also partnering with organized labor, with philanthropy and business to make sure that our summer employment and after school employment programs are much more intentional and that they're leading to post K-12 opportunities. Everybody's not going to go to a four-year college. College isn't for everybody, but learning is for everybody. So making sure that people are learning a skill. My husband went through high school co-op when we were in high school, and his co-op was at Michigan Gas Company. By the time he left Michigan, he was a director because it was set up at that time for it to be a pathway to a real career. And we need to go back to that where we're creating pathways and we're investing in our kids from cradle to career.
All right, great. My guest is Saunteel Jenkins. She is a candidate for mayor. Almost spoke something into
I receive that. I receive it.
I can only imagine the comments, but you guys have known me for a long time. She is a candidate for mayor of the city of Detroit. Why, when the primary arrives come August and the people are going to walk into that booth, here's your opportunity to say why they should vote for you.
Detroiters should vote for me because my story is a Detroit story. I am here. I've been here. I've stuck it out and stayed through the hard times. And I want to make sure that we all participate in the good times. I was born here, raised here, went to school here, and I've given my all to this city. I've always said, if everybody who can leave Detroit leaves, what happens to the people who can't? So I stayed and I fought to make this city better for everybody. And I believe that my experience as a legislator at city council, my experience as a CEO for the last 10 years, my experience in education, nonprofit, and for-profit are exactly what we need right now in the mayor's office. We need someone who can step in and hit the ground running on day one. And I am that candidate, Saunteel Jenkins.
All right. Can I ask this last thing? Because and I say it respectfully before we go, and I hope that it's not unfair. But you know, the next mayor will be African American.
Yes.
There's some who would say that there may have been somewhat of a free pass over the last 12 years. Do you believe that you can keep the momentum from a legislative perspective, a development and growth perspective, going, being the next mayor? Because there are a couple of things that I believe and others have played into some of that growth, you know, because some people can pick up the phone and can get things done just because.
That's right.
There may be a shift in that. I'm going to keep it kind of.
So the answer to that is yes. I definitely believe some dynamics will change with our next mayor. Our next mayor will definitely be African American, and a lot of the resources that were available for the last 10, 12 years won't be available. We won't have a zero balance sheet. We won't have grand bargain payments coming to the city. We won't have $1 billion in federal funds that we've had. So it's going to be more difficult for the next mayor for sure. However, that's more reason why we need somebody who is a coalition builder. And that's who I am.
Okay. Last thing, promise.
Keep them coming, Frankie.
And listen, you've been so gracious. We literally were going to end at 12:39, 9:10. And because I said you were so gracious to give me 30 minutes of your time in the middle of the day. But listen, I've got to ask this question. Yes. 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue is way different than any of us thought it would be, even though we thought it would be different.
Yes.
With the relationships with the current legislature, legislators on a federal level, both congressional and on the Senate side, even looking at, from what I understand, Senator Gary Peters may be stepping aside, and yet being a border city to Canada with the tariff conversation, they gonna cut the lights off. You remember that old person that used to say, "Last person leave Detroit, cut the lights off." Look,
Yes.
now Canada talking about cutting the lights off.
That's right. That's right.
How do you believe that you can govern with the kind of relationship between the White House and the city of Detroit and Ontario?
Through building coalitions. I think that Detroit and Ontario has more in common today than Detroit and the White House. So it's building coalitions. It is building coalitions with the legislators on a state level and a federal level who understand the importance of a city like Detroit and a relationship with our closest ally, right? Canada, right here on the border of Detroit. When Trump was elected the first time, I was CEO at Thaw, and one of his first actions was to zero out the budget that funded home energy assistance. It was zeroed out in the Trump budget. I, at the time, was president of a coalition, National Energy and Utility Affordability Coalition. We lobbied in Lansing. We sent out petitions. We got letters, sent literally thousands of letters to Congress and Senate. The funding ended up being increased instead of zeroed out. So I am a leader who's done it. I've worked on both sides of the aisle to get things done in DC and in the state legislature. So I would do the same thing. I'll partner with anybody who has Detroit's best interest in heart to bring home resources for our people.
Listen, the comments are still coming in. I've got to respect the time that the candidate presented to us. I thank you so much. I'll give you this final word before we go.
I am so grateful for you, for this time talking to you and talking to your listeners and viewers. And I would say that I will continue to fight for Detroiters. I will continue to serve Detroiters. For me, running for mayor is not about me doing well. It's about me doing good for others. I want to continue doing good and serving Detroiters as their mayor. Please go to SaunteelJenkins.com to learn more. Thank you so much, Frankie.
Thank you, candidate. We appreciate you so much, and thank you and your staff for being so gracious to make this happen in the middle of a Thursday. And to everybody that is watching, we appreciate you so much. Make sure that you go to the YouTube page and click like. We're going to be sharing this all over social media, plus on IG, Instagram, TikTok, all the places. That's why I got a little young guy helping me out.
That's right.
All right. He knows all that, so he makes me look good. All right, so make sure that you check it out on all the social media pages. And again, wish you all the best. Thank you so much for joining me, and we'll absolutely stay in touch. And please know that you always have an open mic here.
Thank you so much.
All right. Listen, I am Frankie Darcell. Always good to have more conversations. Let me know in the comments your thoughts as well. Thank you so much for joining us. Have an incredible day on purpose, everybody. Goodbye.